welcome to another episode of North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me as always, I have Jer, Alex, and Liam. Quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon, at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. We could not do this podcast without you. Thank you so much for your support. For those of you who watch other Loading Ready Run content, a reminder that last Friday we had a little North 100 Highlander tournament. Powerful magic happened. Friendships were on the line. The podcast almost became North 97, but we pulled through. I don't want to give any spoilers, but if you want to see some, I can't say live content because we just played it, but some pre-recorded content, definitely check it out on the VOD, and it'll get on the YouTubes at some point. And if you're looking forward for more Highlander content, a reminder that we have the 2017 Highlander of the Year Yellow Jacket Top 8 competition coming up on February 4th, and we have confirmed commentary. The teams are going to be Alex and myself, and then Liam and our good friend Nelson Salahub, Nelly, Local L2 Judge, and Highlander Aficionado as the other commentary team. Jer is too cool to be on commentary because he, of course, qualified for this event. Hey, Jer,
yeah.
You want to give us a little spoiler, a little secret tech on what you're playing in the tournament?
No idea. Please comment below. Let me know what I should play.
Oh, I've not heard of that archetype.
Yeah, oh, very good.
It's strong.
It's related to Oops All Spells.
It's oops.
Yeah, it's
I
like
don't
a
know what my deck
crossover
list
between
is.
Cheerios and Oops All Spells.
Fantastic. All right, let's start off with our normal intro segment. The best card you're not playing up today is me. And instead of a single card, I want to talk about a cycle of cards. You could even say a cycle of cycling cards. I want to introduce the Canyon Slough. The Canyon Slough.
Slew.
Okay. These cards are amazing. Earlier we've warned that you probably don't want to play too many lands that enter the battlefield tapped. So these cycle of lands are the allied duels. So we're going to cycle through a couple of them up here. So Island
Amonkhet?
Swamp. These are from Amonkhet. They enter the battlefield tapped, and they cycle for 2. Cycle, of course, means discard it and draw a card. These cards are actually fantastic. If you're playing fetch lands, they're really great. They can fix your mana really reliably. Late game, if you're playing a slower deck, you can cycle them. And if you're playing that spicy Secret Tech Tithe, the 1 mana instant spell that finds you a plane, or if you're behind on lands, finds you 2 planes, you can even turn it into a late game draw spell. So
Maybe
in case
2 draw spells.
yeah. So if you're wondering if these cards are playable, or if you're listening previously to us being like, you got to be fast in a slower deck, in a mid-range deck, in a control deck, these lands are definitely playable
And cheap.
Inexpensive.
Yeah, a great budget option too if you're looking to get some duels into your deck. Anything else before we hop into today's theme?
Let's get it.
Today, we are doing the second half of our Rivals of Ixalan set review. Last time, we focused on the killer cards, and today we're going to talk about cards we missed. We're going to talk about tribal cards that don't necessarily fit into every deck, and we're going to talk about other cards. And I want to start off by saying, it turns out you viewers love set reviews because, wow, did we get a lot of feedback. We got a ton of comments, a ton of tweets, a lot of suggestions on cards to talk about. We're going to do our best to get to all of those cards because there were a bunch. And it turns out a lot of you really want to try and break Release to the Wind because it's amazing how many people were giving hypothetical situations in which that card would be nuts. So that was really cool, and thank you for all the feedback, and we're going to do our best to talk about all the cards you're excited about in this new set. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go once again in Wooburg, semi-alphabetical order. We're going to, there's a lot of cards.
I didn't do the list this time, so hopefully it's a little better.
All right, our first card, Bishop of Binding. This is a 4-mana, 1/1 vampire cleric for 3 and a white. It has 2 abilities. The first, when it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Bishop of Binding leaves the battlefield. This is similar to Fiend Hunter, those effects. The second line of text is when it attacks, target vampire gets +X until end of turn, where X is the power of the exiled card. Liam, start us off.
Yeah, this card's okay. It's a 4-mana 1/1, which is the thing that's a little alarming about it, but the effect is very powerful. So you get to eat some big creature, and then this, in some ways, becomes that size, right? It's
On
not
attacks.
On attacks, that's exactly. It's not a static effect. So yeah, this card's interesting and powerful. The question is going to be, can you overcome having a 1/1 that you paid 4 mana for? There's a lot of removal that's maybe going to incidentally hit this. And then also, as is the case with like Fiend Hunter, Fairgrounds Warden, all the cards like this, if they die, you often can get blown out, right? You're sort of inviting yourself up to sort of some bigger blowouts.
Another sort of corner case on this card, if you exile a token, you get no power
Yes, so
improvement.
Getting Merit Lodge, no good.
It is
rid
gone
of it.
forever.
Yeah.
It's fine,
But
but
you
like
don't, you don't get the pump.
look, when I'm
because-
getting Merit Lodged, it's always by Surge, and there's a life from the loam involved, and it's happening again next turn. So,
Yeah. I looked at this card and was just like, I would probably rather have Palace Jailer.
Yeah.
Because like even Palace Jailer on an empty board where there's no targets, you turn it into a Howling Mine. So-
yeah, I mean, Jer offered up. Jer and I were just talking about this card, and Jer offered up a pretty good, like, also quarter case, but relevant interaction there where this card might be better than any of the other Fiend Hunter effects, which is like if your opponent show and tells in an Emrakul and you put this in,
That's hot.
and you just get to make a 16/16 one attacks.
It is the magical Christmas land, but I
Like,
mean,
if
There's
you're in a
the
small
one time you
metagame,
do that.
well, but if you're in a small metagame where people are playing like big idiot creatures in various different ways, I mean, this card's stock goes up massively.
it really does.
So I think this is a great opportunity to sort of set the stage on a lot of these cards.
Yeah.
A lot of these cards are totally playable. A lot of these cards are fine, and we'll look at them very favorably. I think the reality, though, is in a lot of established decks, a deck you've been brewing for a while, it's going to be hard to imagine what card you would cut to make this get in.
Yeah, these are a lot of 110th cards.
Totally.
Right? Cards that are like interesting, but don't get in unless the metagame's really specifically geared towards them.
So here's a card that, again, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of decks that could fit in, but it's worth discussion. That is Paladin of Atonement. Paladin of Atonement is a 2-mana 1/1 for 1 and a white. It's also a vampire. It's a vampire knight. And at the beginning of each upkeep, if you lost life last turn, so each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on the Paladin. And then when the Paladin dies, you gain life equal to its toughness. Alex.
So Jer mentioned that this is pretty cool to hit off of a fetch land because it comes in as a 2/2. It might be a little tricky to get it really huge, but I don't know. I think it's all right.
The deck I'm most excited for this card for is black-white aggro, where you have
Oh,
all
yeah.
the black 1 drops that in your
Ping
upkeep
you every turn?
deal 1
You
damage
like
to.
curve
Exactly.
Sarcophage into this.
So
Oh,
that
right, yeah, not Sangerphage, Carnophage.
so
Right,
both,
Sarcophage
yeah.
is the
you
2/2.
combine Carnophage and Sarcomancy.
I mean, I suppose in that case you are turning the life tick down into an
Block.
upside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then
Interesting.
that deck often wants to race, and you can force your opponent to try to race you by just going so wide and forcing them to start cracking back at you. And then this card is getting +1/+1 on your upkeep and +1/+1 on their upkeep.
It
And
also-
if it ever dies, it totally swings the race.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it sort of banks the life loss that you paid in air quotes into it. So I don't know. That might be interesting because I really like Grey Weenie as an archetype.
Yeah.
And maybe this guy slides in.
All right, next up, we have the Trap Jaw Tyrant. This is a 5-mana 5/5 dinosaur. It has Enrage. 5 mana, so 3 white, so 5 in total. Enrage, whenever it's dealt damage, exile target creature an opponent controls until the Tyrant leaves the battlefield. So they get them all back if this dies. Jared, tell me about the Tyrant.
So this is a pretty reasonable card in like white mid-range, which
Yeah.
is I guess why I got it.
Yes.
So-
Big white.
It makes it really hard for your opponent to attack you. They're heavily disincentivized from attacking, letting this block, and then not having a way to remove it. So it basically forces your opponent to have a pretty big removal spell. 5/5, generally good at dodging red removal. 5 mana, good at dodging some of the more conditional CMC-based removal that sees a lot of play, like Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay.
Totally.
So this does dodge a reasonable amount of removal spells. It's not unreasonable for it to see play, but I think it's just not good enough at it on offense for a 5-mana spell.
Yeah, what do you want out of 5 mana?
5 mana, you really want it to be good on both offense and defense because it's a lot of mana to pay in Highlander, especially if you're not ramping into it. And so this on offense, I think, is just too easy to get double blocked by 2 3/3s. Then
The trigger doesn't do anything.
Just traded for a 3/3 exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Not too exciting. Does open up to getting 2 for 1, but like
Yeah.
I just don't think it's quite there.
It's also, again, like, risky, right? Like, let's say you do live the dream and you exile 2 or 3 things. Like, eventually they're probably going to find a way to kill it. And when they do, they're sort of back in the spot that they were in before you played this.
Exactly.
All right, next up we have, and this is a spoiler from the last episode, the only of the Elder Dinosaurs we didn't talk about. We're talking, of course, of Zapalta. Zatalpa?
Zatalpa.
Man, these names are hard to pronounce. Zatalpa is an 8-mana 4/8, so for 6 white, it is a legendary Elder Dinosaur, and it has the following keywords. Flying, Double Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible. Liam, tell me about this dinosaur.
So this dinosaur is a pretty reasonable stat line with a pile of text.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's like missing. So like these creatures are often described as being like French vanilla, right? They have like.
What?
Yeah. They don't have any other text.
French vanilla.
Yeah, they don't actually have any other text besides power and toughness and some keyword. So like this French vanilla is like not quite properly brewed, right? It's got flying. The flying and like indestructible and double strike are all really nice, but then the vigilance and trample feel like they're not as good. If they were something like haste or lifelink.
It'd be insane.
Yeah, then we'd start talking about this card as being really powerful.
Yeah.
As it is, it's either going to see play, like you could play it as like a budget option in a Reanimator deck. It's okay, but it's not insane. And then also, you can play it in big white because that deck always has 25 mana on turn 4.
Clearly.
I guess.
And so the game's over anyway. In fact, your opponent probably conceded when you told them what you were
Easily
playing.
the weakest keyword on this card is trample because it has flying.
Yeah.
It's not often.
You don't
getting
need the
blocked.
two types of evasion.
Not getting chump blocked is
Yeah, like
is
not having
relevant.
spirits be like, under the bus I go is like pretty nice.
I think vigilance is the least relevant
I agree.
keyword.
Like if vigilance was haste or lifelink, I think this card's a real card.
So
I
talk
agree.
to me about why this doesn't make the cut in a normal Reanimator deck. So we've got an established Reanimator deck. You got Grizzlebrand, you've got Iona, you've got Elish Norn, sort of those targets. Why?
So in Reanimator, you're looking for a card to do one of several things. You're looking for it to either massively disrupt your opponent, like something like Iona is the obvious one.
Tidespell
Or like
Tyrant.
Elish Norn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Immediately stabilize the board, which is like Elish Norn. It immediately stabilizes the board of small creatures, stops them being able to go wide. Something that ends the game extremely quickly, like Trench Gorger or something.
Now this gets close to that.
The thing is, ending the game extremely quickly means basically one hit.
Oh.
Lots of aggro decks are actually able to race evenly with 8 damage a turn. Say they have something like Hell Rider
Or a ton of burn or whatever.
or exactly a ton of burn, or even just like 3 creatures. That's often
You never want to turn this sideways and have them go no blocks.
Well,
It's sort of green.
it
The
does
thing
have
is,
vigilance.
it doesn't ever turn sideways,
But-
right?
Yeah.
It does have
that's true.
vigilance.
but it is conceivable to still just lose to an aggro deck if this is the
Yeah.
one creature you happen to
Like
to
if they
loot
go
in
wide
your
enough, it
graveyard.
just doesn't matter.
Exactly, because like if you're doing it on turn 3, say you're already starting the race 5 points down.
You're at like 12 or something.
This is
Yeah.
gonna show
Even
up
starting
way
at
late to the
15, it's
game.
like risky to try to race an aggro deck with this card.
So in conclusion, sorry.
Yeah, and then the last thing you're looking for is something that like enables you to do it again next turn. So like Jin-Gitaxias, Grizzlebrand,
Sure, okay.
something like that. And it just doesn't really fit into any of those spots. It like is reasonable at stabilizing the board and is reasonable at killing your opponent, but you really want like an A+ in one of those sort of 4 categories, and it's like a B in 2 of them. So it's not an unreasonable card to put in, but it's just likely not knocking anything that's already in out.
So if you're building Reanimator for the first time, probably a great option to get in there if you want to make Reanimator on a budget and you open one of these, amazing. If you're a long-time Reanimate player, you're probably not cutting one of your established threats for Zatalpa. My goodness. All right, that's it for white cards. Let's move on to blue. The first blue card I want to talk about is Expel from Orazka.
Got it.
Nailed it. Nailed it. These cards, and they're easy to pronounce names. This is a 2-mana instant for 1 and a blue. It has Ascend, and it says return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If you have the City's Blessing, you may put that permanent on top of its owner's library instead. This card was actually suggested to me by Pharmacist Judge over Twitter, and I'm going to put this under the category of a good card we missed. I think this is actually really interesting. Pharmacist Judge made the argument that if you have the City's Blessing, and your opponent makes cracks a fetch land, so they have a shuffle effect on the stack, you can use this basically as an instant speed Vindicate. The amount of playable cards in Highlander right now that let you put a card on top of your opponent's deck at instant speed are not that many, and so I think there's some application with this card.
The problem is, last episode I talked about like, yeah, we're gonna have to see how hard Ascend is to get, and I realized like It turns out you didn't have to wait for the cards to come out to determine how often you get 10 permanents in play. I just started counting. And so...
Fair.
You were on mono red.
Sure. So last tournament, I realized I actually played 12 games. But in the 12 games I played, my opponents got the City's Blessing once. They got to 10 permanents once, and that was my Paradox Engine Artifact combo opponent who hit 10 permanents as they were killing me on turn 4. And for context, I was playing like blue-red, like red deck recall. I was playing mono red and I had recall in my deck. So I'm ending the game quickly, but if your card doesn't do anything before mono red's killing you, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a card that's interesting, and maybe you do slide it in as a replacement for something like Into the Royal. But I think that we can say with like a reasonable amount of certainty that unless your Ascend card is quite expensive, it's unlikely to be useful. That you're going to hit Ascend super early, especially in a control deck. Because in a control deck, you're looking to hit 10 lands.
Sure.
Pretty much, yeah.
Worth checking out.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for the suggestion. Next up, we have the Curious Obsession. This is a 1-mana aura. An aura is an enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has the following text. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with any creature this turn, not necessarily the one enchanted, you have to sacrifice Curious Obsession. Jared, tell me about this card.
I really like this card.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's really good in blue tempo decks. They're printing more and more blue 2-power, 2-mana flyers, which I think is the way tempo is going to have to go in order to be
Like
successful
cheap
in the future. Yeah, like really
Nice.
cheap evasive creatures. It'll also see play in Boggles, of course.
Oh,
next week.
yeah.
But
And
yeah.
Flying Men.
Yeah, and Flying Men. But I'm really excited for this in blue tempo decks because it's really easy to go card neutral on this right away.
So like even if they kill it the turn after you play it or whatever?
Yeah, if they have sorcery speed removal or whatever, or they untap and kill it, you already went 1-for-1 on this card. And then if it's able to stick around, it's a steady stream of card advantage, which is great, especially in a blue-red deck where you can convert that card advantage into direct damage.
You know, it seems like most of the time this is just going to be a curiosity with upside.
Yeah.
So that's kind of hot.
Cool. What about the risk with all enchantments, specifically auras, is getting 2-for-1. You go to enchant a creature and they kill the creature and they get 2 cards for the 1 card.
So the advantage of playing this in a like blue tempo deck is that those types of decks are filled with cheap and/or free counter magic.
So you can protect it?
So yeah, so you're able to protect your creature, and that's likely what you want to be using your cheap counter magic to do anyways. So
Yeah.
it's not off game plan at all.
All right, our next card is actually the Loading Ready Run spoiler card, Alex. Hint, hint.
yeah.
And it is the Crafty Cut Purse, which is a 4-mana 2/2 for 3 and a blue. It's a human pirate. It has flash. And when it enters the battlefield, each token that would be created under an opponent's control this turn is created under your control instead. Tell me about this card, Alex.
So Santa Claus comes to town. He's
Yeah.
like, ho, 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 Billy, you're going to cast this in response to when your opponent's
Dark Depths.
Dark Depths
Dark Depths.
ability resolves. And then
Have a
you're-
merit lodge.
It's like, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. And you'll be like, thanks, Santa. I always wanted a 2020. That's the nut play you make with this.
Totally.
I don't think that that's going to happen very often. This is unfortunately a card that would maybe be really techy if you could predict. Well, it's like if you could give your opponent good cards, and I'm not going to get into a deck that would play all the hunted creatures because that's garbage.
Sure.
What are you talking about? Hunted Wampus is great.
It's not great.
All
Hunted
right.
Phantasm.
I think a lot
Hunted
of
Centaur?
Yeah. Okay. No, it's just like I think most of the time against a lot of decks that just don't create tokens at all, much less good ones. This is going to be a 4-mana 2/2 with flash and no abilities.
What if you give them the tokens?
No.
Are we going to talk
tokens?
about Varchild's War Riders?
Yes.
We're going to talk about Varchild's War Riders.
What is a Varchild's War Rider? And what set was this printed in?
Alliances?
What?
One,
Wow.
1 in a red.
Okay.
3/4.
Go on.
Trample.
Okay.
Rampage 1.
Great.
What's
That's-
Rampage 1, Alex?
That's an
Whenever,
old ability.
whenever it gets blocked,
Yeah.
it gets +1/+1 for each blocking creature.
Each.
Are you ready
Spicy.
for the other?
Turbo Bushido.
Are you ready for the other shoe to
That
drop?
sounds pretty good.
Okay, go on.
Okay. Cumulative upkeep.
Yeah.
Put a 1/1 red survivor creature token into play under an opponent's control.
That's not very good.
We just get to take their tokens.
Well, no. Well, Craft Your Cut Purse is only the turn it comes into play. You don't get all their
You
tokens.
wait till you get to 3 or 4. I discovered that in assessing cards and
Yeah.
combos and things, if your thesis starts with the words "wait until," just stop. Like, or hope something. Like wait until if it starts with the phrase "wait until,"
Or
just
hope,
stop.
sure.
It will not work.
Can we go back to this War Child really quick?
Yeah.
Is this nuts? I can't tell. Like a 2-mana 3/4?
I have
I mean, I'm going to play it.
I
but-
have always wanted to play this card, and I've never. Well, I don't own a copy of it, but also like, it seems so sketchy.
I mean, you don't
But
have
maybe
to pay
not.
cumulative upkeep. You can choose to stop at some point.
Like, would you play a burn spell that read, give your opponent a 1/1, deal 3 damage? You would, right? That's a burn spell you
two?
would play.
For 2? No.
Yeah, absolutely.
At sorcery
you would.
speed. At
No.
sorcery speed.
Sure. That's
No.
fine. Absolutely. Yes, you would. You would definitely play that spell.
But
In
with that-
mono red?
But
Yeah.
think about it about this: deal 3 damage, fog your next attacker.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's just
maybe it's
negative
worth trying.
thinking.
Like maybe.
Look, Alex is talking about all these, like, you know, if you have wait until or hope, that's just a problem with how you're describing your plan.
Okay.
Plan to have Searing Blaze for the 1/1, then they die.
Bring it back to the cut purse. Back to the cut purse.
Wow.
I look at this card and I think of cards like Containment Priest.
Oh, okay, that
Which
card's
is
nuts.
which is another sort of tech card, but it's main boardable in Highlander because
what
it's
is a
1 and a
cut purse?
1.
Yeah.
Not that there are sideboards.
No,
Yeah.
not that they're sideboards, which means that like the sort of sideboardy like tech cards have to be good enough on their own. So like
But what does the containment
Containment Priest
do?
is 1 and a white for a
Yeah.
2/2 with flash.
Okay.
That says if a creature would enter the battlefield and
Non-token.
non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead.
Yeah,
So
it's nuts.
this browns anything that comes out of Ether Vial, that comes out of Birthing
Graveyard,
Pod,
Reanimator.
that returns from the graveyard, that's like put into play directly from the library, so it gets Panglacial Worm.
Platinum Empyrean off Madcap Experiment.
Yep.
Restoration Angel.
Restoration Angel.
If
yeah.
you resto your own Containment Priest, it dies.
Oh.
Yeah,
Gets exiled.
so it's sweet. And worst case scenario, and they don't have an effect like this, it's a 2/2 with flash.
Yep. Upside bear.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, even Venser Shaper Savant has been seeing less play just because, like, paying 4 mana for a 2/2 isn't that great.
It counters a spell.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's
it-
not
it-
even
But
seen
it doesn't
play.
even see play. It doesn't actually counterspell. It remans it, kind of.
Yeah.
Puts it back into hand. It's like, and
card's so
Venser
cool,
has
though.
huge utility.
Yeah, Venser
and
good card.
it's starting to get cut. So that's how good 4 mana 2/2s have to be. That like Venser's like on the cusp.
We just talked about Venser, but let's really quickly read the text on that card.
Sure, it's 2 and 2 blue for a human wizard, 2/2, flash. When it enters the battlefield, return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand.
So
that
it's,
seems real good.
it sort of counters and definitely bounces.
It unsubstantiates.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. The next card we have is the Time Stream Navigator. This is a 2-mana 1/1 for 1 and a blue. It has a Ascend. It is a human pirate wizard. That's a lot of subtypes. And it has the following text. For 2 blue and tap, put it on the bottom of your library. Time Walk, but you can only activate this ability if you have the City's Blessing. Liam, tell me about this card.
All right, so you have your survival of the fittest
Oh, no.
in play. You survival up anger, you pitch anger, you get this, you play this, you have the City's Blessing.
And 4 mana.
Well, sure, of course. Look, you've gotten the City's Blessing by playing a bunch of elves. It's
Okay,
fine.
Yeah, no.
Then you activate this ability, put it on the bottom, take your next turn, and hope to draw a creature for the rest of the game to take infinite turns.
Or you mill yourself and then when you put this card in the bottom of your library, it's the
draw-
only card in your library,
just
so you
draw
just
it
take
every
all the
turn.
turns.
So how many hoops do you want to jump through to cast Time Walk?
Well, I mean, so Hermit Druiding this is actually not that unreasonable. It's kind of funny because if you Hermit Druid your whole deck, then you cast Angel of Glory's Rise. This gets brought back because it's a human. And then if you have a Zombie Lady of Scrolls in play, this taps because it's a wizard. So it
then
does
you don't
double
take
duty.
infinite turns.
Well, no, you do that after.
All right.
So hang on.
The sass aside, what's the conclusion on this?
I don't think this card's playable.
card's not
It's too slow. Is the big problem. If you could just
if
do it, it was fine. But you have to play it and then say, please don't kill my 1/1, and then you get to take an extra turn.
Even if the ability cost less, I think it would be,
Yeah.
I like might try to get it, but it also just almost costs as much as
Time Warp.
Time Warp.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
a big part of why Time Walk is good is being able to choose when you Time Walk, and this just it's like you have to bend over backwards to even set it up, much less
Interesting.
activate it when you really need it.
It's, it's also much better when your opponent doesn't necessarily know it's coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
true too. Time Walk much worse when your opponent can prepare for it.
Yeah, the worst Time Walks I've ever been on the receiving end of is like when they made a slightly suspicious attack that seemed kind of bad, and I was like, okay.
You're like, we're racing now,
Make some
got
bad
it.
blocks, Time Walk, oh, I'm dead.
It's like, I guess the one, this is not super likely, but if you could like Court of Calling for this on an end step or something, like maybe that's powerful, because then you do get the surprise element. But I just think it's too much of a
Yeah, it's just
too much of a circus.
They keep printing creatures like this that try to balance the idea of having Time Walk on a stick, and none of them are good enough. Because
Well,
that
that's
effect-
probably a good
That effect's
thing.
too good. It's too
Yeah.
good.
All right.
So, yeah.
So our last blue card is actually the first card in our new tribal section. So tribal cards are kind of hard to evaluate in a vacuum because that's the whole point of tribal. They're good when they're together. So let's introduce our first tribal card, the Seafloor Oracle. This is a 4-mana 2/3 Merfolk Wizard for 2 blue. And whenever a Merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Jer?
Play it in Merfolk.
Play it in Merfolk.
It's Fish Fedric. It is the Kevin Federline of Ophidians.
Yeah, enough said.
Take with that what you will.
We've talked, especially at the first Ixalan, is Merfolk playable? Turns out the answer is yes.
Yep.
And this is nuts
more
in it.
playable now.
I know a bunch of people are picking up on the new Merfolk, and there's several people putting a copy together. So
Cool.
Yeah, when you say the tribal section, this is actually just Merfolk.
There's a vampire.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah. There's one vampire
Vampires
forthcoming.
Maybe something we
Which one's going to be the playable
I-
vampire? Can you guess at home?
Type in the comments now.
Yeah.
Check
felt really
back
bad.
later.
Matt Greer sent me a prototype for a Mardu vampires list that I haven't looked at yet.
Ooh.
But I like
Vampire
skimmed it.
Lander
I
is getting
skimmed
there.
it and I was like, ooh, this is hot.
All right.
he's brewed some spicy decks.
Very spicy.
So moving on to our next color, black. We have the Moment of Craving. This is a 2-mana instant for 1 and a black. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn and gain 2 life. And this card is definitely a good card that we missed. Liam, talk about it.
Yeah, so this card, the closest analog to this is Farika's Cure or Sorin's Thirst, which are black for a card that says deal 2 damage, you gain 2 life to target creature.
Yeah.
This card's just better in almost every way.
Yeah.
It's easier to cast, and the -2/-2 is very occasionally worse than damage, but on balance, probably better on average.
Yeah.
And this is an effect that I think a bunch of decks are actually pretty in for. I've wanted to play Farika's Cure and Sorin's Thirst before, but the mana cost has been really prohibitive.
Yeah, it turns out like the difference between 1 and a black and black is very, very large.
Well, and it's just also that in Highlander, black is definitely the least mained color. Like it's you very rarely build a deck that is base black splashing something else. So most typically when a deck has black in it, it's splashing the black, and so getting a double black card in,
Well-
unless it's something like Hymn to Tarok, isn't something you're doing very
Somebody made an
often.
interesting observation a while ago, which is that black is one of the most selfish colors in Magic. And the reason they cited for that was that there's so many pips in a lot of their spells. Like the double black and sometimes even triple black spells.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. Like a lot of the best spells that come out of black are not very splashable.
No, and that's like probably for the best, right? You don't want Necropotent splashable. You don't want Phyrexian
You don't want
Devourer.
Sinkhole to be 1 and a black.
No, you don't, and you don't want Phyrexian Obliterator to
be-
cost anything other than
2 black.
Quad black.
Right. So that is true. I think too. that a lot of the times the black cards that don't require a huge color investment, they often are a little low impact, and this is a departure from that in a lot of ways. This card's good, and I think it's going to see play in some control decks and some aggro decks. You could basically put it in whatever you want.
I was gonna say that the other thing coming from a deck that I play that is base black, splashing green, is that even then, having something that's a little easier to cast is still good.
Oh, totally.
Because like the ceiling on what I will pay black for is very high. Like the one removal spell I'll play is like Malicious Affliction because it literally 2-for-1s.
Totally.
I won't play stuff like what's the one that kills the non-vampire, non-zombie, non-werewolf?
Victim of Night.
Yeah, I won't play Victim of Night even though it hits almost anything, because like Go for the Throat is going to do the same thing most of the time.
And it's easier. Yeah.
So I would potentially play this card.
Cool. All right, next up, we have the Dead Man's Chest. This is a 2-mana aura for 1 and a black. Enchant creature on opponent controls. Now, this is wordy. So first up, when enchanted creature dies, exile cards equal to its power from the top of its owner's library. You may cast non-land cards from amongst them You may cast non-land cards from among them for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast those spells. Jer, tell me about the chest.
So this card's kind of interesting. You put it on their creature, then you kill it, then you get cards from their deck.
Yeah.
The fact that the cards get exiled and you can't play lands, the fact that the cards get exiled face up and you can't play lands probably means I'm not going to play this card.
Yeah.
But
Now, why is that?
Just because you want to make sure you're getting value. So if you like flip a bunch of lands, this card just didn't do anything.
Yeah, okay.
And the fact that they're face up means your opponent gets information, so they get to play around the cards they know you have access to.
There's 3 things that make this kind of bad. The first is, as Jared says, the information is
Okay.
up. The second one is like you need to A, have them have a creature, B, arrange for that creature to die.
So the setup cost.
Have an amount of or power worth casting it on, and then you need to dodge. Each of these cards flip being a land. So it's like if I have 3 power and I get 2 lands off it, I got 1 card that I might cast.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
Assuming-
it also non-bows with a bunch of black removal, like Dismember, Moment of Craving, Languish,
Because it
Toxic
uses the last known
Deluge.
power and toughness.
Exactly.
So if you have a 5/5, but then you deluge it, it dies a 0/0. Dead Man's Chest does nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like this
That's
is
awkward.
This is too much work for not enough benefit. And if I wanted something that was going to gain me card advantage, I could play something like Night's Whisper and get actual card advantage.
yeah.
All right.
Well, Night's Whisper is 1 and a black sorcery, lose 2 life, draw 2 cards.
Yeah, so same cost, but...
You're always
A
going to
known
actually draw
quantity,
2 cards
totally.
that you want.
All right, next up, we have Mastermind's Acquisition.
This one is
I'm just waiting for the right. This is a 4-mana sorcery for 2 black, and you get to choose one. One, search your library for a card. Put it in your hand, just search for it. And the second mode is choose a card you own from outside the game and put that into your hand. Alex?
This is the same as Diabolic Tutor and has a mode that cannot be used.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
Technically, you can choose it. It just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, like
Cast it for Storm count.
Storm occasionally plays Diabolic Tutor.
They play Diabolic. It's okay.
Yeah, most of the time.
Would you want to play a second copy? Because this card is functionally identical in our format.
Probably not.
I
but
could see
maybe.
playing it, honestly. Because I've thought about playing, like, Increasing Ambition before, which is 5 mana, 4 and a black for search for a card, and then you can flash it back and get 2 cards. But that's too slow, basically. But 4 mana, it's expensive, obviously, but it's not so expensive that if you're a dedicated combo deck, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I should clarify that by the second ability doing nothing, that's because in Magic tournament rules, outside the game means your sideboard, and there are no sideboards in Highlander.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So in formalized formats, outside the game is your
Thank you,
sideboard, and in our format where there is no sideboard, there is no cards to fetch from it.
Yeah, any of the wish type cards
Yeah.
do
Very little.
Technically nothing.
You may put them in your deck. I don't know why you would.
Yeah,
That's
they're legal.
It's kind of cool to see Wizards printing cards like this again.
I agree.
Cards that refer to stuff outside the game. Like, I think it's interesting that we're potentially going to live in a standard and modern world. Well, in modern you already could because of glittering wish, but we're living in a world where in standard people are maybe going to be wishing for cards out of their sideboard, and I think that's potentially really cool.
Yeah.
But in Highlander, unfortunately,
just
not an application. But the tutor mode, I think people might play it for that.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, next up, we have the Oath Sworn Vampire. This is a 2-mana 2/2 Vampire Knight. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you may cast it from your graveyard if you gain life this turn. Jared, tell me about this card.
I think this card is maybe good in a couple decks.
It's neat, right?
I played Mardu Life Gain a little while ago. It was like a mid-range deck with a Life Gain sub-theme. And it's possible if I wanted to grind, I'd put this card in.
Does this maybe get into the Orzhov mid-range deck, or Orzhov aggro deck?
It's like, how much do you want to bear?
Well, no. It's not just a bear. It's a bear that comes back. Like,
Yeah, the recursive threats are a big deal, especially against control decks that often aren't going to stabilize the board basically ever. They're just going to bury you in
Like,
card
I feel
advantage.
as
And
though-
if you make them deal with this card like 3 times,
because one of the advantages that like black aggro has is its resilience to getting destroyed. Like creatures that just come back and are really hard to put away for good. And this goes with that theme. It's a little tricky to activate that ability, but maybe not as tricky as you think, because the kind of costs you pay for this sort of stuff is like on the easy end, it's stuff like Raid for Bloodsoaked Champion.
Yeah. If you're
Or
playing
like,
Moment of Craving, you got a little 2-card.
or like
yeah.
exile a creature or something like that. This one, I feel like if you have some life linkers or maybe just some incidental ways to gain life, I could see you getting this guy back. Like,
GT.
Yeah, I was
one
gonna
GT
say-
counter gets this guy back into play.
Cool.
Is there some way to go infinite with this card?
I don't think so.
I can't think so off the top of my head.
I can't think of an effect that sacks a card and gains
That
you
one-
life in the same one.
That
And
one that we
pays for it.
talked about last time, that new...
The 3-mana.
Does it make 2 treasures when your
One.
thing dies? It only makes 1 treasure.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it's fine.
You need 2 in play.
So
You
neat card.
copy it.
No, you only need 1 in play. Oh, well, so it's a 3-card combo, but you can go infinite with it. That's kind of cool.
How?
Because that only cares if it dies, so you can play like the artifact that lets you sack a creature to make 2 colorless mana.
Ashnod's Altar.
Ashnod's Altar, and then you also have that, so you make a treasure, and then you gain a life somehow. That part, I haven't figured that
So
part
the
out
fourth
yet.
card.
It's-
4th card is Aether Flux Reservoir, and then we
Okay.
kill our opponents with
No,
it.
the,
And then
the
you're
card,
also netting a mana that
the
way.
card
too,
you're
right?
talking about is Soul Warden.
Okay.
That works too.
But you
Also,
need to
wait.
gain the first life.
Yeah, you only need to gain 1 life to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And-
Aether Flux Reservoir.
Okay.
Anyway, not a good
It's-
combo.
no.
Cool. All
But
right,
it
let's
is a
move-
combo.
Let's move on. Next up, we.
Actually-
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask, like, that was on the notes anyway. That's in the section of, like, no, this card actually isn't good. But it sounds like maybe it might be.
For Oathsworn Vampire, for a lot of these cards, again, it's worth talking about. It's like if this card was arguably bad, I don't think we'd talk about it. If there was a card,
Yeah, because we don't talk about like the draft chaff or cards that are just awful.
yeah, could this card be Highlander relevant?
Maybe.
Quite possibly.
See someone playing
I
it.
think the maybes are way more interesting to
Yeah,
discuss.
like
than-
you could put this in a deck. Again, it's always like, would you cut a card in an existing deck for it? Maybe not. Could you build around this, or would you see this in Highlander? Totally.
Like I look at this card and I'm just like, how many lifelink cards can I cram into like Black Mold, and how many do I have already?
In order for that
I
ability to
could-
be relevant.
That I could maybe slide this guy in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, cool, thanks.
No worries. Next up, we have the Tomb Robber. This is a 3-mana 1/1 human pirate for 2 and a black. It has Menace, which is pretty neat. And then it has this interesting ability, 1 mana, discard a card, explore. So this is kind of neat. Liam, can you evaluate this card for me?
Yeah, sure. So I've certainly not been the strongest proponent for the Explorer mechanic, but I actually think that this card's pretty interesting because it's a cheap discard outlet, and you get something in exchange for discarding, which you don't always, right? Like if you wanted to talk about a card like Una's Prowler, where it is a discard outlet, but actually you lose something for discarding. It is free. This is kind of interesting because. If you're like a reanimator deck, this is a way to get stuff into the bin, or maybe just incidentally if you want to get stuff into the bin, like maybe you're like a green-black mid-range deck where the Explorer is actually like kind of relevant, and you're also playing like Recurring Nightmare and some others like reanimation effects. like discard a card as a cost is actually a lot better than some other costs, because putting cards in the bin is actually super relevant at times.
So, for example, if this was 1 and tap, totally different card.
Much would not be interested, I don't think,
Yeah.
in the same way.
The issue I think I have is that this guy costs 3.
Yeah.
And surely you want your discard outlets to be cheaper than that.
In like the super dedicated reanimator deck, maybe, but like having a discard outlet that is a real card is maybe worth the 3 mana, right? Like the fact that this, like, after you reanimate your thing starts getting in and has menace, like that's pretty hot.
The menace is great. The fact that it could die to Fork Bolt and take something else kind of hurts.
Yeah, that feels awful. Like if you go bird into this and then they kill both your things, it's awful. But like,
also this is pretty reasonable late game because it just lets you use all your mana to chain lands into your next spells. So you can, if you have this in play, you can virtually guarantee you're drawing spells.
The second thing about the Explore ability, specifically with Reanimator, is if you reveal a Reanimator target off of Explore, you can bin it.
yeah.
So it just, like, if you're in a graveyard, if you're in a deck that cares about your graveyard, Explore is more relevant than you might think. It's not just setting up your next draw, it's also fueling your graveyard, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
I don't know, this is a neat card. It's not spicy, but it's close.
It's okay.
All right, let's move on to our next color. I'm seeing
Rouge.
we're on to red here. Our first red card, we have the Rekindling Phoenix. This is a 4-mana 4/3 for 2 red. It's a Phoenix, like the name says. It has flying, and it has a very interesting ability. When it dies, you create a 0/1 red elemental token that has the line of text. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this token and return target card named Rekindling Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield, and the Phoenix gains haste until end of turn. Alex, what do you think of this card?
I like recursive threats.
Yep.
I just wonder if this one is good enough. Because, okay, so 2 red, you get a 4/3 flyer. Evasion is pretty cool.
Yep.
If it's killed, you need to untap with this 0/1. Like, I suppose that's not super hard to defend.
Like in order for them to kill it, then the 0/1, they have to 2-for-1 themselves.
Yeah.
Like it's at least a 2-for-1 at best. I think the card that this most analogously compares with is Death Pact Angel.
What's that?
It's from Return to Ravnica.
Yeah.
It's like 2 black, white.
You said Death Pact
Yeah, Death
Angel?
Pact.
Death
Angel.
Pact Angel.
Yeah. It's definitely better than that card.
It's
though.
way better than that card. So this was like, it's 3 white, black. So this is a 5/5 flyer that when it dies, you put a 1/1 white and black cleric token into play that has pay the mana cost again, tap and sack it to return it to the battlefield. And so like if you look at these 2 cards next to each other, I mean, the Phoenix is like incredibly
better because you get it for free.
Right, exactly. I don't know. I don't think the token's sick.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I don't think it's totally unreasonable to expect to get the Phoenix back occasionally. I think the question with this card is if you're paying 4 mana for a 4-drop that's double red, is this as good as a lot of the other options that we have?
Chandra or a haste creature in an aggro deck.
Fiery Confluence or even Ash Cloud Phoenix, which is also very good. Famously exclaimed, not Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Yeah, I guess just like what deck wants to play this?
I could see playing this in our base red mid-range deck, actually.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, it's like so easy to get a 2-for-1 against control. They never want to let it resolve, and if they do, it's a huge pain.
Ooh, that's
Huge
also
pain.
a cool token. I actually, I think like mono red Death and Taxes actually probably loves this
I
card.
was almost gonna say that
Yeah,
actually.
I think that's actually probably a pretty good shell for this card.
Yeah, maybe,
Even like
maybe this has a
medium to
home
big
somewhere.
red, like that cares about the flying dragon.
Medium, large red.
So what
Yeah,
would medium rare?
like not Eldrazi big red, but like dragon big red.
Sure.
Maybe probably wants
So I
this.
guess like this is a sort of like card that makes it into like weirdo red decks.
Yeah.
And mono
I
red
think if
doesn't
it had
care about-
haste on the first go around,
Oh,
this
that'd
card
be
would be
so good.
insane.
Yeah. I
It would
think
be
there's a
like-
good reason why it's
It
not
would be
there.
like 8 out of 10. Play this in every red deck. But like the fact that it has haste when it comes back is also a big
Yeah.
deal.
That's really nice. I agree. Yeah, this card's interesting for sure.
All right, let's move on. The next card we have is See Red. And actually, I was going to say I'm seeing red as a segue to move over to it, and then I read that the second card we had was See Red, and I couldn't segue into a color, and then
You just like couldn't bear to break alphabetical order.
yeah. So anyways, See Red is an aura. It's a 2-mana aura for 1 and a red. Enchanted creature gets +2/+1 and has first strike. And at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with a creature this turn, not this creature, sacrifice C red. Jer, tell me about this card.
So
You like this card, right?
I do.
Okay.
I think this card is pretty easy to get in a bunch of damage with. It makes your creature
Better.
basically impossible to beat in combat. It gives it +2 power and first strike. And if your creature's not winning combat at that point, it was never winning combat ever.
Yeah, that's fair.
You are going to get 2 for 1 to bunch when you play this. So
Because you're in red.
well, just because your opponent's going to want to kill the creature that this is on, and then you're going to lose 2 cards for their 1 card.
Would you play this over Madcap Skills?
Now, Madcap Skills is great because it's one of the few red auras I see a lot in Highlander. So Madcap Skills, somebody remind me what it
Same
does.
cost.
It's +3/+0 and menace.
Yeah, I thought it was a single red. It's
No.
one in a red.
It's one in a
Yeah,
red.
so Madcap Skills, really, really strong. You see that card often in the Goblins deck, occasionally in red deck wins. Because
Infect, I think, likes this card.
yeah,
If you can
because
play it.
Madcap Skills is an insane clock and it provides evasion. So this is the nearest comparison for C-Red.
And so the reason I think C-Red may see play over Madcap Skills is because if your opponent ever has 2 creatures in play, they're instantly throwing it in front of the Madcap Skills creature, and then you're getting 2 for 2.
Okay.
You're trading if they have to block. But there's a reasonable chance that they need more than 2 creatures to kill the creature with C-Red.
Interesting.
Because if you put it on a 2-power creature, like say you put it on a 2/2,
Yeah.
which is like a pretty conservative base case. Your creatures are usually better than that.
Sure.
Then you have a 4/3, so they need better than 2 2/2s to block it with.
Yeah, the advantage that Madcap Experiments has, if you go turn on one
Skills.
drop, Madcap Skills goes, I can't stop talking about that stupid card. You go turn one,
that
one
card's
drop,
pretty good against
they
C-Red.
play a blocker on turn 1. If you play Madcap Skills on turn 2, you can attack and they can't block because of the evasion.
Yeah.
So Madcap Skills gives you the advantage of a quicker clock because of that use case. This
is.
gives you an advantage of more prolonged, better combat, but not necessarily the clock, because they're almost guaranteed going to block this on
what-
turn 1. So you're preventing
what-
yourself on 4 damage.
What 1-drop is a Highlander deck playing that they want to block a creature with on turn 1?
Yeah,
I mean, if
It's probably a mana creature and they're not blocking.
Okay, fair.
or if they do, it's still good for you.
Yeah, that's fair. You're making up the card eventually. All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Tillinalli's Summoner. This is a 2-mana 1/1 human shaman for 1 in a red. It has Ascend, and it has this very wordy ability. Whenever it attacks, you may pay X and red. If you do, create X 1/1 red elemental creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. At the beginning of your next end step, exile those tokens unless you have the City's Blessing. Liam, tell me about this card.
So, I think the theory. I had a couple people tweet at me about this card and comment about it, and I think what some people were talking about using this card, and it was like in an aristocrat shell. So you have a sack outlet on board, you attack with this, you make some 1/1s, and then you get to sack them for value. I think that the big problem with this card is that it's just too expensive.
It's too. I think it's too expensive, and I think it's too vulnerable, because you like cast this, untap with it, turn it sideways, pay like I don't know.
8.
Well,
You're not going to get to 8.
You're not
You
gonna
just
get
don't
to
have
eight.
8,
two or
right?
three.
You pay
I think
2.
a reasonable
yeah.
case is like you pay 3.
Yeah, okay.
You know, you tap out at 4 mana and you make 3 1/1s in this, and they block this every time.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I was really surprised to see that this didn't have like menace or something like that to make
Yeah.
it like situation like at least harder to
It
block.
might accidentally survive.
This
Yeah,
creature
exactly.
is getting to attack once.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So I think that's the big problem. It just doesn't do enough.
And I think Alex hit the nail on the head, is that it's not good on turn 2, because then you don't have enough mana to
anything with it?
use its ability, and you're not going to have the city's blessing.
Yeah, you would.
And by the time you play it later, a 1/1 just is never going to survive.
Yeah, like as somebody who brews aristocrats a lot, I would rather pay a little bit more mana for something that just has more bodies attached to it
Sure.
than something that I could have as a mana sink.
Or even the same. Compare this to
Yeah.
Mog War Marshal. It's already
Oh yeah, like
3 bodies in itself.
Mog
Like,
War Marshal is just like 3 creatures, and will always be 3 creatures.
I mean, the other comparison, if I'm trying to picture a deck would put this in, is what's the 2/1 for 1 that makes all the 1/1s?
Oh,
Whenever you cast a spell?
Young Pyromancer.
Young Pyromancer.
Sure, yeah.
So Young Pyromancer is as I said, a 2/1 for 1 in a red, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, make a 1/1 elemental. So
I think
that's the same mana cost. It's the same token strategy, but
it's so much better because you don't have to attack with the creature.
Yeah.
It has 2 power.
Yeah.
And you can you're getting a free bonus that's actually quite good off of something you would do anyway.
The ability to attack with the tokens, but keep the Empiremancer back and be able to keep generating tokens is a massive world of difference compared to the Summoner.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to green. And hey, Alex.
Yeah.
Do you like dinosaurs?
I'm sort of medium on them.
Okay. What about giant replicating dinosaurs?
Okay.
Let me tell you about the Polyraptor. This is an 8 mana 5/5 dinosaur for 6 green.
It's not a great ratio.
So it has an interesting enrage ability. Whenever it's dealt damage, create a token that's a copy of Polyraptor. So if it's dealt damage once, you now have 2 5/5s that both have that ability. If they're both dealt damage, now you have 4 dinosaurs that both have that ability.
Yep.
Like, this card seems nuts.
This card is Samael, the Desolate one.
I don't think it is nuts. I think it's like 1 million mana to maybe eventually take over the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's 8. And to even start doing something useful, like you cast it for 8, you untap with it, you attack. You know, maybe your opponent doesn't even block, because it's like if you've gotten to 8 mana and you're just like a 5/5, like attack, I sure won't block that, and then get you with whatever I have going on.
Yeah, it definitely needs setup to really do what you want it to do.
It needs setup. I think it needs your opponent's interaction in a way that they're not going to agree to.
Yeah, and of course, there's the standard, there's the limited combo right now, which is it and the 3 mana guy that whenever dinosaur comes in play. 4 mana, 1/3.
Forerunner of
The dinos, I don't know.
the dinosaur thing.
Yeah.
The Empire, maybe?
Forerunner of the Empire. So this is a 4 mana 1/3 for 3 and a red human soldier. When Forerunner of the Empire enters the battlefield, you may search for dinosaur, and whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Forerunner of the Empire deal 1 damage to each creature. So this is...
Does that go infinite?
No, because
no,
eventually the Forerunner dies to the
dies.
damage.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it makes a whole ton of power.
Yeah,
It makes 8 dinos.
You get 40 power. Wait, that's not how math works. That is how math works.
That
I
is how it
math.
works. It's 1, 2, 4, 8.
Yeah. So, like, there are a lot of really cool interactions with it, but in a 100-card singleton...
I have a judge question about this card.
Yes.
When it says make a copy, like, let's say I give mine haste somehow. Does the copy also have haste?
No.
So you can't, like, sneak attack this out and go infinite or anything like that?
No, the way a copy works is literally copy the text of the card.
Okay.
So if anything, if there's a +1/+1 counter on it, if you've added some extra stuff. So a perfect example is if you have like a creature land that you can animate, and you've animated that creature land, and then you clone that, your clone comes into play as an unanimated, probably tapped version of that land as the card is printed, not as its current status.
I had that judge call last night.
Yeah. I think that ultimately this card just suffers from what a lot of these overcasted cards suffer from, is that just like they don't do enough for what you're paying for them, and there's actually effects that cost less that do way more.
Sure. Like Splinter Twin looks at this and laughs.
Yeah, or I mean, even just like casting Primeval Titan for 2 mana less,
like,
you get so much.
Yeah.
Or like things with comparable mana costs, like you could play
Craterhoof Behemoth.
Yeah, Craterhoof Behemoth.
Sure.
You could play the Avenger of Zendikar.
Well, I like to think of cards not only in their best case scenario, because you can think of a lot of best case scenarios for this card. We just talked about it, 2-card combo. You're taking things over. Yeah. You also have to evaluate a card in its worst case scenario, which is you draw this into an empty board, or your opponent's ahead on board, and you're just like, well.
Or the worst case scenario maybe is like they have a Mazavith or something.
Sure,
and
yeah.
Flyers or something. Like then you paid 8 mana for a 5/5.
I think though that this is one of those cards that I say I will, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to like keep this one in mind, because this is like the kind of card that like maybe gets broken by another card getting printed, right?
You can make a sweet deck. You can put this in in any deck that plays Pyroclasm as removal.
Oh, well, I even mean like there might be an effect printed that, like, who knows, right? Like maybe there's an effect printed that gives that, like, when your creatures enter the battlefield, they take 2 damage and gain haste.
Like,
and then that goes infinite, right?
Yeah,
Well,
That's just a drawn game.
Is it?
Is it?
Oh yeah, because you
They
can never
never
stop the
They
loop.
never stop creating.
Yeah, at no point do you actually get to attack.
The Polyraptors, they're infinite.
It has to be a May.
Sure, it'd have to be a May. But like that kind of card could get printed, right?
That's really funny.
And if that happened, then all of a sudden this card gets way more interesting. If you like,
Yeah.
like
Sure.
maybe it's an enchantment
But
or something.
I guess it's just like you're still stuck with the mana cost conundrum, and then if you're cheating it into play, there's better things you can cheat into play.
No,
All
maybe.
right, so
I think it's
let's
worth
move on.
Yeah.
So next up, we have the Tender Shoot Dryad. This card is a 5-mana 2/2 Dryad. For 4 and a green, it has Ascend. It has the following text. At the beginning of each upkeep, so your upkeep and your opponent's upkeep, create a 1/1 Saproling. Saprolings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. Now, a lot of people in the comments and over Twitter are like, this card is nuts, right? Jared, tell me about this card.
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to cease play in hoofs sometimes. The one big downside is that it's really vulnerable to the cards that are really good against hoof, which is like cheap red sweepers.
Arc Trail, Pyroclasm.
Yeah, those types of things. But it does do what that deck wants to do, which is create a lot of creatures pretty quickly.
Yeah, this makes Gaia's Cradle pretty good.
Yeah, and Craterhoof Behemoth
Yeah.
and so on and so
You
forth.
know, I look at this card and the one that I think of is Deranged Hermit.
Yeah, it does a pretty reasonable
It's
Deranged
kinda
Hermit.
similar, although like it's less mana
Impression.
investment because Deranged Hermit is
Has
3 green
Echo.
green. Is it a 2/2 or a 1/1?
It's a 1/1.
It's a 1/1.
And it makes 2/2 squirrels while it's in play. I think it's closer to Whisperwood Elemental. That's
Oh,
the
okay, yeah.
closer
Yeah,
analog to for
Whisperwood
me.
Elemental is a really good analog on that
It's
one. So
that
tell
one's
me,
a
yeah.
3 green for a 4/4. At the beginning of your end step, manifest the top card of your library. So you put the top card of your library face down onto the battlefield. It's a 2/2, and you can pay the mana cost of that card to flip it up if it's a creature.
Sure.
And it also has an additional ability which is really good, which is sacrifice Whisperwood Elemental until end of turn. Face up non-token creatures you control gain. When this creature dies, manifest the top card of your library. So basically,
card's really good. You should play it,
non-token,
by the way.
non-manifest cards get to manifest when they die this turn. So it is on the other side. This card is really good against cheap sweepers.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I do think the one thing with the Tender Shot, or Tender Shoot, I guess, Dryad, is, I've been sort of critical of Ascend in the show, and I think that it is going to be difficult to hit in an average game, but the decks that this card's going to go in are going to be good at hitting Ascend, and this card really helps you hit
well,
Ascend
it
quite
fuels
quickly.
its own ability.
I agree, and that's something I wanted to come back to, is that, as you were mentioning earlier, it's not necessarily easy to hit Ascend, and I think Hoof is a deck that's going to hit Ascend.
Yeah, way more
And
often
this
than
card
almost
is a
anything
card
else.
that's going to hit Ascend. So when you combine those two things, it's going to reliably
Like,
hit.
I look at this and I think the worst case scenario is you untap with this and you're at 8.
Life?
Maybe no,
Oh,
at 8
permanents.
permanents.
Okay.
Permanents.
Maybe going
Yeah.
to 9 because you like the worst case I can think of is you go forest, this thing untap, have made 2 guys.
Yeah.
Like that's the worst, and you could easily get better than that.
I mean, no, the worst case is you go like land, elf, land, mana dork, and then you play this, and then they kill your things.
And they Pyroclasm. You've got 2 lands, no cards in hand, no more.
No, the worst is you're like, oh, I have 99 cards, I get a game loss.
No. But I mean, the situation where you get to play it. That's
Sure.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
irrelevant.
kidding.
The card is interesting. The card is playable. It is maybe not the best 5-drop in the decks that want to play it, but definitely go nuts and tell us how it goes.
Just having 2 toughness is so brutal
I was
on
gonna
a
say.
5-drop. Like, it's exciting, but it also dies to shock, and that's kind of scary.
And the fact that even if you have Ascend, if they Pyroclasm, this
your
dies,
yeah.
and then all your Saprolings
still die.
Also die.
All right, let's move on to our next card. Next up, we have another tribal card. We have the Deep Root Elite. I was like, what's that word I wrote down there? Oh, right, Elite. That's how you spell that word. This is a 2-mana 1/1 for 1 and a green. It's a Merfolk Warrior. And whenever another Merfolk enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target Merfolk you control. Not even this one.
yeah.
This is really
Combo.
cool because it's like There's a human that does this.
There's
is
the one drop? Yeah, the one drop.
Champion of the Parish.
Well, this champion of the
That
parish.
champion only gets the counter.
Yeah, it itself gets the counter.
That's why this one's interesting, is because you can put the counter anywhere you want, like on your guys that have Island Walk or are unblockable or something.
Or True Name Nemesis.
Yeah,
That's where you want to put those counters.
Something that true name.
The one awkward thing though is that on the other hand, it's going to stay at 1/1 for a long time. So
I mean, maybe that doesn't matter because like it's contributing its power elsewhere that's going to get in anyway.
well, I'm just saying it dies easily.
So
Yeah.
this is a 2-mana pseudo lord. Now, is this
It's
enough?
not a lord.
No,
I
I
think,
think
I
that's what
think
I'm
that's
saying.
generous.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's.
I think this card's good. Like I think
It's good in Merfolk.
Yeah, the Merfolk deck is going to play this card, but like if they play this and then a 2-mana lord, I'm killing the 2-mana lord first every time.
Oh, yeah.
Like this card's decent, but it's awkward because it's like, it's whenever. Okay, it's on ETB. I thought it was when you cast a Merfolk, and I was going to say that's potentially kind of awkward. But yeah, I mean this is going to help pump up the boards, make them bigger.
All right. Next up, we're on to gold.
Gold.
And the card we're going to talk about is Path of Metal. Not metal spelled M-E-T-A-L,
Are
but
those
M-E-T-T-L-E. Yeah, don't even worry about it.
Dark
This
traps.
is a red-white legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature that doesn't have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, or Haste.
Okay.
Whenever you attack with at least 2 creatures that have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, and or Haste, transform it. And on the backside, we have Metzal, Tower of Triumph. You can tap to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 1 in a red and have it deal 2 damage to an opponent, or you can pay 2 in a white and tap. Choose a creature at random that attack this turn and destroy that creature. So this card is something that a lot of people
What a weird card.
mentioned about. This is a
Yeah.
card that originally we didn't think was neat, but this is a card that suddenly has been making quite a ripple in Standard. Jer, why is this card seeing play?
So it's seeing play in Standard because a lot of the 1-drops have some of those abilities. And it sort of does a reasonable Ramanap Ruins impression, a card that just got banned in Standard.
Okay.
It just gives you a way to interact with your opponent after you've sort of ran out of gas. You can just keep tapping it to deal 2 damage to them. The downside I see for this in Highlander is that a lot of the 1-drops are 2/1s, especially in red and white.
Yeah, 2/1s with
and
no ability.
Don't have those abilities. So I find it hard pressed for this to see play in Highlander because this is clearly an aggressive card. And I just don't think it lines up with the way the red-white decks in Highlander look.
Yeah, like I think the scenario you want to have is that you cast this as a one-sided like mini Pyroclasm, but the kind of cards you would want to play in a Load of the Ground deck, you would really easily shoot yourself in the foot with this.
Yeah.
It's just like I think that they again just like missed on some of the keywords that are going to be relevant. It's not like the actual worst. Like if you look at like a lot of the white threats are going to hit a lot of these, but the red threats are the ones that are really going to struggle. There's basically no keywords on most of those threats other than haste is the one that's going to come up sometimes.
Yeah.
The other thing I think about this card is that even when you flip it, like in Highlander, that second ability doesn't often come up, right? The white destroy a random creature that attacked you this turn. It's too
That
expensive.
one's so weird.
It's
Yeah.
really weird.
But it's expensive is the big issue, right? It's going to cost you 4 mana. And the spending 2 mana to deal 2 damage to each opponent is okay. But again, it's actually 3 mana, right? Because you've got to tap this land as well. And so if you're choosing between using this land...
This land is sort of free, though. Like...
Sure. But it's still just like, are you spending the 2 mana? Are you spending 3 mana on a turn to do this? Or are you deploying a spell?
And the reason this is so powerful in Standard is because, like, you can conceive of... You're regularly flipping this on turn 3.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Well, because you can stack your deck with threats that have those keywords.
Exactly, and you can put a bunch of these in your deck, so it, like, does... You can reliably... Like, plan your deck to reliably have it.
Yeah.
But in Highlander, it's just so much harder with the
think-
singleton nature of... You can't build around this because you only have 1, so it's just not worth it.
Yeah,
And
I think
the
that to make this card work, you would have to water down the quality of your includes so much that the deck would be terrible.
Well, and also, you're just not always going to draw this, right? That's what Jared's getting at, is that, like, you only have 1 and it's 100 cards. And so you don't want to design your deck to high roll having this every single game, but make your deck, like, on average worse. You'd rather just have a consistent deck, especially when you're playing aggro.
And as Liam was mentioning earlier, like, while it's nice to have this flipped in play, it's not actually, like, the biggest payoff either.
Especially for Highlander.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
especially for the challenge of getting that done.
All right, let's
That
move on.
second ability can get around Shroud and Hexproof, though.
It can.
Kills true name, but yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, kills a possible true name. So, yeah, again, just inclusion on that card, definitely worth talking about. But it also shows sometimes that not every good card in one format is transferable to another format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our next gold card we have is Zakama, the Primal Calamity. This is a huge Dino Swole, an Elder Dragon.
Dinosaur.
Elder Dinosaur. This is not EDH.
Nope.
It costs 9. It costs 6 Naya. It is a 9/9. It has Vigilance, Reach, Trample. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap all lands you control. And it has 3 more abilities. 2 in a red, deal 3 damage to target creature. 2 in a green, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And 2 in a white, gain 3 life. Liam.
So, the reason that this card has been thrown to me is because I said I'd play it in High Tide.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, it untaps
Untap all lands.
I don't know why they had to screw me by putting this if you cast it text in it.
And
No,
having it not cost blue?
No, that's fine. That part's very manageable. No, but the if you cast it part means that it's right out. And I don't know why they had to do that. Why does it have to be if you cast it? Is someone
Because
breaking
it's
this?
busted if it's not.
Is
No,
it?
It's totally fine.
You need a bunch of lands in
You
play
need
for this to be
9
good.
mana. 9.
Do you know what deck this card does go into?
What?
Is a
Five-color
five-color
Heartbeat
heartbeat
Storm.
spring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You guys were almost perfectly synchronized there.
Well, I was going to say heartbeat of spring.
I
Storm.
wanna play this in a deck with Caracas.
Stop it.
You just go infinite.
Yeah.
I've actually been thinking about jamming all the mana flares into a deck and
So the nice
seeing
thing
what
about
happens.
this in a mana flare deck is if you go infinite, it's
can't go
damage to a
infinite.
creature. You
Yeah,
can't go
you
infinite.
can't kill them with it. I know.
Yeah,
That's what I
if
was
it's
saying
in-
too.
If it was,
You can
if it was
gain
a lightning
infinite
bolt,
life.
You can gain life.
yeah,
board.
but that's so boring.
It also doesn't actually win the game. Like there's a bunch of decks in Highlander that can beat infinite life.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you wipe their
Yeah.
board, you gain infinite life, you destroy most of their permanents, but you don't win.
Wow.
I will say, from like a design perspective, this is a really cool card.
The 3 heads.
So,
Oh yeah.
Like the 3 heads, the 9 power,
Cast.
you like
have to
cast
cast.
it and then you untap and then you can get these 3 effects in any sort of combination. It's almost like it has its own sort of like command attached to it. Where it's
Yeah.
like, pick from these modes, you can choose each one.
Yeah, it's
more
like a
than once.
confluence.
Yeah. So like that's neat. And it's going to be something you want. It's like, oh, I could gain 9 life or blow up 3 artifacts or enchantments or like wrath your creatures.
I do actually think this card is good in the 5-color heartbeat of spring storm deck. So that's like a deck that's playing all the mana flares like Mirari's Wake, Mana Flare, Heartbeat of Spring,
Karametras.
Yeah, Karametra.
Dictative Karametra.
Dictative Karametra, like all of them. And
Yes.
then you're basically just looking to jam on your opponent. This deck is not good. Well, it's okay. It's sort of the ultimate roller coaster, right? Like you take all of the consistency out of High Tide and you add explosiveness. So
And
this,
then
this
you play a bunch of draw sevens.
It's not
You're like,
even
what do I
that
get?
much
I'm gonna roll the dice.
explosiveness, being honest.
Yeah, no, those decks. There's a lot of. That's a lot of powerful nothing. That's one of those things you're like, make
Well-
infinite mana, draw 30 cards, pass.
yeah, it's like it's either powerful nothing or powerful something.
Well,
Yeah.
lots of times you have to be like, play a mana flare, hope you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I get
Yeah,
like
and
that.
then they
give
kill
you the
you.
turn or they kill you.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, let's move on. Next up, we have back to our tribal section. Komena, Tyrant of Orzaka. This is
Orazka.
what? Man, they
You got it the first time.
Stop putting these. Oh, I spelled it wrong in my notes. I wrote Orzaka, and there it says Orazka.
You know, this sounds like a you problem, not a
This is-
Razka problem.
This is a 3-mana 2/4 legendary Merfolk Shaman for 1 green blue. It has a bunch of words. Tap another Merfolk you control. Tap an untapped. Tap an untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena can't be blocked. Tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control. You get to draw a card. And finally, if you tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. Liam, take it away.
So this card's sweet, and it definitely a marquee card in the Merfolk deck, which prior to this set wasn't actually blue-green. It was blue-white.
Mono- oh, yeah.
It was blue-white.
Green has made it so
You think they're playing
good
Bant now, or are they just are they
No,
dropping
I think
white?
they're just playing blue-green. So they used to be playing Bant. They used to be playing blue-white and only splashing like Sig, River Guide,
Edric.
Stoneforge Mystic.
Stoneforge Mystic. Actually, was the other white
Edric's
card.
not white.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was blue-white, but it was mono-blue with a white splash?
Yeah.
Is what you're telling me? And
Yeah.
now they're going to drop that white splash for the green?
And now it's probably just going to be blue-green, right?
cool.
Not mono-blue with a green splash. It's just going to be a hard blue-green.
Cool.
And this is one of the reasons to do it. So this card, it's got a nice body on its own. It's a 2/4, so it's
I
not
like that 4 toughness.
Yeah, not that easy to kill. Gets in on its own, which is pretty nice. And then one of the problems that you can sometimes have in these tribal decks is that if you end up in the mid-range mirrors where both you and your opponents have big creatures, you just kind of stare at each other, and Kumena helps you break the symmetry of those board stalls because you can just add a counter to your team a couple
Or
of
just
times.
start drawing more
Or
cards.
get it
Start drawing more
unblockable.
cards.
Cool.
But it gives you a lot of options in
totally.
those board stall situations. So yeah, this card's great. Also worth noting, you can do it the turn it enters play. So you can
That's
put it into
spicy.
play, tap some other stuff, and get that effect right
Start
away, which
getting
is also quite
value.
nice.
All right, next up, we have Merfolk Mistbinder. I'm going to wait for a second for the card to be ready. This is a 2-mana 2/2 Merfolk Shaman for a green and a blue. And other Merfolk you control get +1/+1.
It's nuts.
Jer,
Yep, played in Merfolk.
done.
It's copy number 3 of Master of the Pearl Trident.
Not quite. It doesn't give Island Walk, which is super relevant
Oh, that's a
text.
shame.
But
Still, it's a 2-mana lord.
That's
yeah,
super hot.
That's good.
Yep, card's good.
Next up, we have Legion Lieutenant. This is another lord. This is a 2-mana vampire lord for
If
white
you
and a black.
guessed Legion Lieutenant as which vampire would feature in the set.
Yeah. Other vampires you control get +1/+1. Alex, is it the day of Vampire Lander?
It's nuts.
I
But
love it.
It's this. It's I love it. Yeah, it's the same card as the previous one.
It's close.
Matthew Greer sent me a Mardu vampires list that I have not looked at yet. Sorry, Matthew. I feel like this could be close. The thing that is a little challenging is that it looks like it's spreading into 3 colors, which is the same frustration I had with zombies. Is Amonkhet came out, I was like, new zombies, and they're
all
white. Pass. But that having been said, like this card is obviously bonkers in a tribal deck. Like a 2-mana lord that's a 2/2 is just insane. Whether there's a sufficient density of like white vampires,
Only one way to find out.
see. We'll
Time
find
to
out.
swing it up. Yeah.
I think that this is especially enticing though for the vampire tribal deck because vampires go super wide. With Merfolk,
So many of them make tokens.
yeah, like with Merfolk, getting another lord is obviously very good, but oftentimes, at least the Highlander Merfolk deck was actually this kind of disruptive tempo deck, whereas the Vampires deck is going to be this like base white, go wide, make a bunch of tokens.
Totally.
Kind
Base
of.
white?
I think it is base white now.
Ooh, I think it's base black still. Like the best vampires you can play are black.
I think a lot of the new white ones are really
Yeah,
good.
the white black
Yeah.
Marin Fen
planeswalkers.
is really insane.
I think it's definitely base white black.
Yeah, maybe that's right.
Guys, remember like
Splashing red.
Bloodghast
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
not
but
sure
I
you
don't
have
think you
to play
build around
Bloodghast
Bloodghast. Yeah,
anymore.
Bloodghast maybe. I mean, it
Like
comes
you play
back.
it, but like
But are you an aggro deck?
Drana is one of the best cards
So
in that stuff.
yeah, so if you're
That's
looking
true,
if
Drana
you're
is
looking
double
at this
black.
vampire deck, are you a mid-range deck playing a token strategy going wide? Are you an aggro deck with your top
You're
curve?
an aggro deck, I think.
I don't know. That's a weird part. You have to really evaluate.
I'm not sure your
That's-
density is high enough to be a full-on aggro
That's
deck
what I'm
yet.
saying. There's a
possible.
ton of the 1-mana 2-power creatures, but I don't think there's enough density of lords or threats to make that the heart of your deck. I think most of the really good cards you have in vampires right now are your planeswalkers. You've got 2 Sorens at 4 mana, 1 Soren at 6 mana. You've got a bunch of insane 4 and 5 mana like vampire lords, like the what's the 4-mana 2/2 that poops out vampires that flips and lords them all?
It's a 4-mana 3/3 flyer.
Even better.
it's
Bloodline Keeper.
Bloodline Keeper, like that card's insane, and that card's good enough to almost see play in mid-range. I don't know if the vampire deck is necessarily an aggro deck or a go-wide token
Well,
strategy.
there just needs to be more cheap vampires for it to be like really cemented as an
Yeah.
aggro deck.
And that's one of the things Alex and I found when we were brewing it, is it felt like there were 2 decks, and you couldn't really reconcile them. There's so many great, cheap, aggressive ones.
yeah, it's going in 2 directions, and like 50% of the good cards are in each pile, and you're just like, come on. I need twice as many cards or half these cards to be
Yeah.
one or the other.
All right, Alex, I want you to talk about the very last card we have in our set review today. And it's the only artifact we're going to talk about. It's the Golden Guardian. This is a 4-mana 4/4 golem. It has Defender. And for 2 mana, it fights another target creature you control. When the Golden Golem dies this turn, return to the...
Guardian.
Pardon me?
Guardian.
What did I say?
Golem.
When the golem dies this turn, return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. And on the other side, we have the Gold Forge Garrison. It's a land. Add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool, or pay 4 and tap it. Create a 4/4 colorless golem token.
Could you flip this over again?
All right.
I want to tell you a story. When I read this,
Yeah.
there were two.
Key.
There were 3 words that I did not read on this card.
All right, what was the first word you missed?
Defender.
Okay, that's a big one. It's,
The other
That's a
2
hard word to
words.
miss.
Okay.
The other 2 words were you control. 3 words take this from being like it's insane to
I feel I was denied key.
Yeah.
Need to know.
Yeah, like I glanced at this and I was like, this is super sweet, and now it's just like,
Even if you leave Defender on it, this card is still
Yeah,
great.
I agree. If it was just like fight something else, this card. would be
I read
insane.
Defender, but I didn't read You Control the first time I read it, and I was like, what have they done?
So let's agree. The other side of this card is insane. The other
Yeah.
side of this
Oh,
card
if
is
you could flip this
really,
card efficiently, it would be
really,
amazing.
really, really, really
the other
good.
side of this is completely bonkers.
Like this side is so good. They're like so
agree.
so
It
good.
adds 2 mana.
Yeah, of any color, not even colorless.
Yeah.
Like
Any one
that's
color, yeah,
that's
that's
really
crazy.
really strong. But the front side,
it's
so
just like, what deck plays this?
what deck wants to fight
What
its own
deck- yeah,
stuff?
what decks
You
wants
know
to-
what deck wants to fight this?
Oh,
the
dear.
Polyraptor deck.
Stop it.
Okay, you know what you could do?
Stop it.
This is kind of cool. You could be like an artifact deck.
Stuffy doll.
No, you put. I mean, Stuffy Doll's okay, but you could play like Su-Chi, like the things that like when they die they make mana, and then you could like
Oh,
sort of go
no.
off on the turn. You like fight your own Su-Chi, it dies, you get some mana,
So the
make
great-
a 4/4.
The great part of the Stuffy Doll deck is Stuffy Doll never kills your Golden Guardian. You pay 2, deal 4 damage to an opponent. You just pay that over and over if you got a bunch of mana.
Yeah, that's true. You can stack
Wait,
it.
you
That's kind of
can't-
hot.
Oh, hang on.
So Stuffy
Wait,
Doll,
wait,
let's
wait,
go back
wait,
to Stuffy Doll. Stuffy Doll is a 5 mana construct 0/1. As it enters the battle play, when it enters play, choose a player. It's indestructible. Anytime Stuffy Doll is dealt damage, deal it to the chosen player instead, and it has the ability you can tap and deal damage to itself.
Surge.
Yes?
This doesn't work.
Why?
It can't deal damage back to the golem.
You don't flip
don't
the golem.
flip it.
You
You
just
just use
keep
the
punching
golem
the
to dome
golem
them
over and
for
over.
4.
'cause-
Oh, okay.
It's 2 mana, right? You just pay 2 mana to deal 4 damage to your
Okay,
opponent. That's actually
that's
kind of hot.
Yeah.
I don't dislike
The
that.
Stuffy Doll Golden Guardian
combo. I mean,
To-
it's, you
to
only need
finish this insane
5 mana.
thought.
To 10
Okay,
mana to kill
let's
it.
go back to Alex here.
To finish this insane thought, Su-Chi is a 4 mana, 4/4 artifact creature.
Yeah.
When it dies, you get 4 generic mana.
I see. So the Su-Chi kills the golem, eh?
And if you
This-
get,
this
you get the
kills
4
the
mana
Su-Chi.
to instantly produce the other golem on the other
Wait,
side.
what does the Golden Guardian say again? Doesn't the other thing fight? Like it's actually a fight, right?
Yeah, they both die.
They both
So they
die.
would both die. So that's no bueno.
No, it's fine because you get the 4
they
mana.
both
You
Oh,
get-
die.
you want it to die.
And then Su-Chi gives you 4 mana that
So
you can
then
use
you make the-
immediately because
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
dies.
then you get the land.
The land comes
Wait,
back
wait,
on
wait,
tap.
wait.
So I actually broke it. This combo is
Yeah.
great.
Well, it's not a combo. You turn 2 4/4s
All right,
into
all
a
right.
land in the 4/4.
I broke it. This synergy is fantastic. I will also point out
Your
that they've
definition
printed
of
this card just in
fantastic
time
is-
because there's an esports team that now exists called the Golden Guardians,
Hey,
Amazing.
guys,
owned by Golden State.
Hey, Alex.
I misread another line on this text.
Yeah,
Can you
well,
flip
what-
back over again?
What line did you miss? Fight? Did you say you missed fight?
When it dies
Yeah, you didn't realize that?
after activating the ability.
Yeah, it has to die.
That's why it's good with Stuffy
Su-Chi,
Doll.
look, that's why you gotta play the 4/4 that makes 4 mana.
You thought you just had to activate
It's not
it?
Well,
just
no, I
two
just thought you had to
activate.
fight it, and it was like Garrick.
No, dog.
You thought this was like the most busted card in Magic history.
I'm telling
I
you.
got
4 mana,
excited.
4/4,
It was a
that,
big
like,
robot, and I
that
was
kills
stoked.
your opponent's thing and then flips into a bust.
So I want to make Golden
have to drive
Guardian
the
Stuffy
Avis
Doll.
no downsides.
So I want to make the Stuffy Doll Guardian deck right now, but I don't know how I can put Fastball in it. I'm gonna have to spend some time
Just
brewing.
play fastball, that card's just good.
No, I don't think so. Hashtag
Just base
Fastball to
green
0.
it.
Stop
All
with
right.
the fastball to
So
0.
that is our set review for the day.
If you want fastball to be 0, run for council. Otherwise, you don't get to say fastball to 0.
Okay, Liam.
Yes.
I spent some amount of time figuring out how to make the Polyraptor
Oh,
combo work.
Excellent. Tell me more, Graham.
It's not a perfect system.
That's okay.
You don't say.
Good start.
You need some setup.
All right,
That's
step
fine.
one. Step
so
one.
there's
Polyraptor.
there's a variety of enchantments that will give creatures haste.
Yeah,
Okay.
like Yavimala, whatever.
Fires of
Concordant
Yavimaya.
Yeah.
You know, Fires of Yavimaya is 3 mana. You got either
Concordant Crossroads.
yeah, Mass Hysteria in red is just single red mana. All creatures have haste, or
Yep.
like Alex said, Concordant Crossroads.
This is good to play
Yeah.
in the early game
the
too,
same in green.
so that they have their things tapped. That's good.
Yeah, for the sake of argument, since we're going to Magical Christmas Land, let's say Temur Ascendancy, because then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, you may draw a card. So you get to draw some cards when the Polyraptors come into play.
Well, if you go infinite, you end up decking
If you
yourself.
say-
It says May.
May,
It's May.
If
Okay.
you say the word seismic assault, I'm coming over this table.
No. Now you
it gets
need
even better.
some. No, I'm talking about how you get to attack with the Polyraptors. That's why they have haste.
Yeah.
You need some kind of anthem effect.
Uh-huh.
That's super relevant, or this whole thing doesn't work. And then the keystone is this is a card from Commander 2013, Where Ancients Tread.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
So
I'm
it's
amenable.
4 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature with power 5 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Where Ancients Tread deal 5 damage to target creature or
So
player.
you've got to do it to the Polyraptor.
So you need to puff. You need like a +1/+1 for your team. So the Polyraptor comes in. You get to draw your card off Temur Ascendancy.
Right.
Deal 5 damage to itself. Repeat that because it's a May. Repeat that as many times as you want, and then you just attack with all these 6/6 Polyraptors with 5 damage.
And
one
you hit
column.
them for
broke
5.
Alex.
Okay, you know what? This is so stupid. I'm just gonna say I've got the perfect anthem for you. It's Coat of Arms.
Yeah, why not?
Coat of Arms is 5.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we could play that new like Radiant.
Radiant Destiny.
Yeah,
I think it's the light.
What's making that noise?
I don't
it's
know.
the light.
Well. That was
All of a sudden, the
very
world
frightening.
got a little darker.
Well, anyways,
Can you hear it over your headset?
Turns out those lights have tiny, tiny fans in
okay.
them.
Well.
Hey everybody, welcome to North 100.
That was our set review.
So that was our set review. Thank you, Graham, for taking us to Magical Christmas Land.
So we only needed 4 colors for this combo, even.
Okay.
3. We could stay. I'm building this deck. We're in.
All right. That was our set review. Thank you so much for all of your suggestions and letting us the cards you want us to talk about. We really appreciate all the feedback and the great fanfare and everything from the previous episode. Let us go now to our usual closing segment, Powerful Magic. And up today we have a Liam story that maybe features Alex and maybe just a tiny bit of a spoiler on one of the games that happened in our Friday live
The
Highlander
spoiler
stream.
is that we played.
All right, Liam, tell me a story. Set the stage with your words.
All right, I will do just that. So Alex and I are playing. It's Friday, last Friday, in fact. Serge and Jeremy have already played. There's some winner. That's not important. So now Alex and I are playing, and Alex is playing Black Mold, the deck he is most well known for.
Yep.
And I am playing a pile of rug cards, a deck I am not that well known for, but it was pretty good. And so we've been having. This was in game 1, right? That this happened. I think this was game 1. Was this game 1 or game 2?
I think it was game 2.
I think
right,
it was game
anyway.
2.
What happened in game 1, not relevant. This was game 2. And Alex and I have had like a reasonably back and forth game. He's had a kind of aggressive
Well,
start.
Alex comes out swinging.
Yeah.
Was this the one okay. Anyway, Alex has had a reasonably aggressive start. My life total's not super high, but I've like sort of stabilized the board. I've killed some of his stuff. And so it's at the point now where Alex just has like a Vampire Hex Mage. You had a Reclamation Sage in play that had blown up a Search for Azcanta. And maybe another and you had a Hissing Quagmire in play. And so I have 7 lands in play, and one of them is Raging Ravine.
Mm-hmm.
And so Alex goes to attack, and he attacks me with 3 of his creatures. And this attack will just actually kill me. It's just lethal. But I made a pretty sweet play. So
So cool.
I animate the Raging Ravine, tapping it to pay the red mana cost in order to actually pay the 4. And Serge stops and is like, "You're aware that you're animating like a tapped creature?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's
like,
fine."
I cocked my eyebrow at this
Yeah,
point. I'm
yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah, Alex like gave him the full sideways. He was like,
You can go watch this. In fact, if you go check out the VOD,
like,
you can
yeah.
see it all
What's
happen.
he up to?
Right. So then,
And then the nut.
still before blocks, I cast Bounding Crisis, which is a 1 blue-green 3/3 with flash that says when it enters the battlefield, you may tap or untap target creature. Now, what's important and why this play needed to go in the way that it did is that it says creature not permanent. So Pestermite and Deceiver Exarch, you can just untap whatever you want. They don't care. But Bounding Crisis needs it to be a creature. So I animated my Rampaging Ravine and then
Raging
Ravine, sorry, and then untapped it and then blocked 2 of Alex's creatures. Got the old 2 for 0.
Just crushed him.
Yeah,
It was such a turnaround.
Was a reasonable guard break. And then I went on to
Do something in that game.
To potentially do some other things in that game. We won't spoil the result for you, though that play might give you some indication. Maybe Alex came back. Maybe he had more threats. Maybe not. Maybe I subsequently, killed him. You'll have to watch the VOD to find out.
It was a really, really clutch turn. I was really impressed by that.
It's like, you'll never know. Maybe I cast Karavik Spite.
True. That's plausible.
And you died.
Plausible for sure.
All right. Well, that is our episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. A reminder, this episode is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. We literally could not do this without your support. Thank you for all your suggestions. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for being awesome. As always, from us, Norse 100 to you. Tune in next time. We'll see you next week. Cheers.